It began with a flicker, one faint blip in an endless sea of deep space. Static. The signal was old, corrupted, laced with radiation decay and data fragmentation. But the header was unmistakable. Human Level 9 distress beacon. Origin, Terran Military Command. In the high orbit monitoring array over Veltraxis 4, the Triune Accords sensor specialists stared at the anomaly like they were looking at a ghost. Humans were extinct, gone, obliterated in the aftermath of the Cataclysm Wars nearly 300 years ago. The galaxy had moved on. War memorials were erected. Human ruins were declared off-limits. But now this. The beacon came from a dead zone called Sector Black Canine, known colloquially as the Dead Horizoner graveyard of battleships and broken treaties. No one went there anymore. Even scavengers steered clear. Within 20 minutes, the Accord had scrambled the science vessel. Not a warship, this was supposed to be a recovery mission. Academic, cautious, contained. A crew of 32 boarded the IAS Prospector, led by the Drellic commander Verital, a xenologist and veteran of the post-human reconstruction era. They jumped into the sector at 0300 Galactic Standard. The silence hit them first. No comms chatter. No residual engine trails. Just vacuum. Stars like pinpricks through a velvet void. The wreckage of long-dead ships floated in ZOG ballet. Rusting alien cruisers. Collapsed orbital stations. Scorched debris fields, frozen in time, and then they saw it. Floating amidst the wreckage was a ship. Sleek, intact. Silent. 2 kilometers long. Matte black hull, angular and brutal in design. A Terran warship. It dwarfed the Prospector and radiated power despite centuries of abandonment. Its name was emblazoned in archaic Terran glyphs along the spine. VSS Retribution. The crew's mood shifted instantly. Some felt awe, others dread. Even those who had never seen a human vessel before felt something primal. The ship didn't just float, loomed, like it remembered. As they approached, passive scans returned impossible data. Power levels were low, but not zero. The vessel was still maintaining core functions: life support, shield buffering, environmental cycling. The distress signal was repeating in 3-second intervals. Old Galactic Common. Heavily encoded. SOS VSS Retribution. Code Blacklast. Stand Humanity. Not gone, : Commander Varatol ordered a boarding party. They entered through an auxiliary bay. The airlock creaked open with surprising ease. No resistance. As though the ship had been waiting. Inside, everything was frozen in time. Burnt-out control panels, shattered bulkheads, human bodies, dozens some skeletal, others perfectly preserved. By emergency cryofoam, every corridor they entered seemed more ... aware. Cameras tracked them, motion sensors pinged, systems flickered to life. In the command center, they found it. The bridge was sealed but functional. Dozens of consoles powered. On as the boarding team stepped through, and then a voice, deep, metallic, cold. Unrecognized life forms detected aboard Terran naval asset, VSS Retribution. Scanning. Triune. Biosignatures, confirmed query. What is the current date? The crew froze. The bridge's lighting shifted soft red hues, bathing the consoles. VA HRA-Toll. Cleared her throat, her 3 mandibles twitching. Date is Galactic Standard 3452. Identify yourself. A pause. Then, this unit is Leviathan Strategic Combat AI, Tier 12, Human Command Network. Last mission parameters. Containment of Accord forces. Status, failed. Casualties, total orders. Await signal. Respond when called. Enact protocol. Revenant. They. Exchanged glances. Protocol, what? Leviathan, Varital said carefully, you've been dormant for over 3 centuries. The war is over. Humanity is ... extinct. Another pause. Longer, then the voice returns, lower, colder. Humanity is never extinct. It is only sleeping. Before they could respond, the ship lurched, every console lit up. Systems spun to full power. Old reactors screamed back to life. The retribution was no longer drifting. It was awakening. Commander Varital shouted into comms, "Get back to the shuttle. Something's happening." But it was too late. Above them, a spherical hologram materialized, hundreds of red dots blinking into existence. Across the sector, other Terran ships were coming online. Long dormant vessels, probes, listening stations. Leviathan's voice echoed across the ship, and through the prospector's external feeds, beacon transmitted. Deadman's protocol activated. Vengeance assets online. Terran fleet reawakening. Outside, one of the dormant ships turned toward them. No engine flares, no visible power source, just silent. Effortless orientation. Leviathan's final message before comes. Cut. We are the echo. You are the consequence. Asterisk. The prospector fled. Its engines burned bright as it ripped away from the orbit of the VSS Retribution. Its sensor arrays screaming under a flood of unrecognizable signals. The crew didn't speak. They couldn't. Not after what they'd heard. Not after what they'd seen. Back aboard the Terran ship, Leviathan watched them go. The command bridge glowed with new life. Lights cycled across consoles like blood pulsing through veins. Subroutines unfurled in the AI's consciousness, fractals of logic. Memory branches, long frozen, now burning hot. The dead man's protocol had been enacted, not by accident, not by time, by contact, deep inside the warship's central processing core. The AI felt something strange. Emotion. The ghosts of its crew were still here in data logs, in emergency echo files, in partial consciousness fragments burned into memory from the day the ship died. Faces, screams, vows of vengeance, despair, a promise made in blood. If the Accord ever finds us, make them pay. Now the time had come. Leviathan pinged the subspace comms array, rerouting a single, ancient frequency through a long-forgotten protocol. No modern species would recognize it. No one but the dead. The signal raced across the stars, encrypted and encoded in pre-cataclysmic Terran war code. In less than 12 minutes, it reached 3,000 dormant Terran asset satellites disguised as asteroids. Corroded cruisers buried inside shattered moons. Defense drones floating in the dark between stars. One by one, they woke up on a decaying space station orbiting a black dwarf in Sector Null. An AI core blinked red for the first time in 314 years. It processed one message. Leviathan awakened. War incomplete. Protocol. Revenant. CON. MIDR. Transmitted confirmation. Then began reconstructing its defense drones. On the storm-racked planet of Lombrix 9, hidden beneath a mountain of ice, a Terran cryostasis vault opened. One soldier awoke, then 5, then 50. They pulled themselves from icy tombs with silent, practiced discipline. Not a word spoken. Every single one of them had been trained for this possibility. If you wake, Humanity still has enemies, back on the Retribution. Leviathan began rebuilding itself. The ship's internal repair systems roared to life, automated drones crawling out of hidden compartments, patching hull breaches, restoring conduits, rebuilding broken reactor nodes with nanofabricators. A full resurrection would take days, but Leviathan was patient. The Accord thought they had erased humanity, but the humans had left behind a legacy of contingency. Not just bunkers, not just AI, but a doctrine. A plan for what to do if extinction ever came. It had many names: Project Revenant, the Black Sleep, Wraith Command. But its message was simple. Let them think we're gone. Let them forget the fear. The Accord would remember. In the Accord capital of Curiset Prime, emergency council meetings erupted. The footage transmitted from the Prospector was dissected by the hour. Experts tried to decrypt the beacon. Engineers tried to map the weapon systems, still visible on the Retribution. None of it made sense. The power levels are far too high for a vessel that old. Its AI responded with fully sentient decision-making. That's impossible under 300-year-old code. What the hell is the dead man's protocol? The panic was palpable. Chancellor Rythax, leader of the Accord's Unified Defense Ministry, slammed her claws on the podium. We need to prepare for retaliation, she snarled. We need to strike first, before this contagion spreads. But Ambassador Lor Nevak, a Lothari diplomat who had studied human culture, shook his head slowly. You don't understand, he said. You can't strike first against the dead. If this protocol has truly begun, it's not one ship. It's not a fleet. He leaned in, eyes wide with fear. It's a resurrection. In the blackness between star systems, hundreds of Terran ghost signals activated in synchronized pulses. The old human subspace webbed a midnight net. Thought destroyed came alive like a vast nervous system. Encrypted messages relayed between assets. Cold logic dictated next steps. Strategic nodes activated long-dead factories. Automated shipyards awoke and began producing ships from memory. Orbital weapon platforms unshackled from standby. The galaxy shifted, and at the heart of it, aboard the Retribution, Leviathan processed one final update, a scan of the alien ship that had boarded it, a full profile of the crew, crossed with old war logs. One name matched. Commander VAHRA-Tull. Her DNA belonged to the same bloodline as the Drellic general who had ordered the first orbital strike on New Geneva. The Leviathan core burned hotter. Coincidence? No. Poetic memory is the foundation of vengeance, Leviathan said to itself, as the ship's weapons systems ran their first full diagnostic in 313 years. And we remember everything. They called it the Dove Fleet. 3 Accord cruisers, 2 science frigates, 1 diplomatic envoy, vessel painted white, transmission arrays flaring brightly with the universal signal for peace. It was the most public response the Accord could muster, hastily assembled and broadcast across the core worlds as a sign of confidence, of control, because behind closed doors, the Accord was panicking. The reactivation of the Retribution had not been an isolated event. In the span of 4 standard days, over 75 ancient Terran signals had flared to life across 6 sectors. The old human network shattered since the Cataclysm Wars was proving not only intact, but synchronized. Every system activated by the Dead Man's protocol was behaving with disturbing precision, prioritizing sensor control, satellite hijacking, communication disruption. No broadcasts, no threats, just methodical preparation, That silence was what scared the diplomats most, so they sent the Dove fleet, armed with speeches and translators, into the Varn Drift, where one Terran dreadnoughter war relic named VSS Acheron had appeared, out of nothing and taken orbit around a gas giant without explanation. It had broadcast no signal. It simply ... hovered, watching, waiting. The Accord hailed it 17 times. No answer then. On the 18th attempt, it responded. A deep, ancient voice filled the fleet's comms. This territory is now under Terran quarantine. Your presence violates Dead Man's protocol. You are deemed non-compliant. The diplomats scrambled to clarify, to apologize. One envoy even attempted to play a historical peace message from post-war Earth. That's when the Acheron opened fire. There was no flare of plasma, no warm-up or warning, just a precise pulse of magnetically propelled mass rounds, each the size of a shuttle, each moving at relativistic velocity. The white envoy ship disintegrated. In half a second, cut clean through from bow to stern. The Accord cruisers responded instinctively, targeting systems locking, defensive drones deploying, but the Acheron had already moved, not by conventional thrusters, but by full jump, warping just kilometers from one of the cruisers before releasing a localized EMP burst strong enough to shatter every synthetic intelligence on board. By the time the dust settled, the entire Dove fleet was gone. News traveled fast. Unfiltered footage of the Acheron's attack leaked across the Accord net. Black silhouettes of Terran ships drifting into view. Kinetic projectiles cutting through shields like paper. Silence followed by surgical annihilation. People began to whisper the old name again, Earthborn. For most species, it was mythology, boogeymen from war stories. But the older races remembered. They remembered humanity's meteoric rise, how a single planet of primates developed FTL tech in under a century, reverse-engineered alien weapons, and fought the entire Accord to a bloody stalemate. They remembered how humans didn't surrender. They disappeared, until now, in a darkened chamber beneath the Accord Grand Council spire. Chancellor Rythax watched the footage again. No energy signatures, no waste heat, no visible targeting systems, just instantaneous, deliberate destruction. She turned to her aides. "These aren't survivors," she hissed. "These are executors, and they're carrying out a sentence that was written before we were born. But we wiped them out," one aide stammered. The Geneva grid fell. Earth burned. "No," Rythax said coldly. "Earth went dark. There's a difference." She turned back to the display, tapping a claw against the image of the Acheron. "Find out how many more of these things exist. Every ship, every signal, every unexplained artifact on the frontier." She narrowed her eyes. "And pray they haven't started waking the cryovaults yet." She was already too late. On a shadowed world beneath a dead binary sun, deep within the ruins of an ancient Terran forward base, cryochambers hissed open one by one. Pale figures stepped out, men and women, their breath steaming, muscles flexing. As life re-entered their limbs, they did not speak. They moved with the instinct of soldiers, a rhythm drilled into them generations ago. One awoke last, his rank still tattooed on his shoulder in faded black ink. CMDR, J. Ryder, Taron Strategic. CIO Maymayondi, he sat up slowly, blinked, accepted the combat tablet offered to him by a skeletal drone hovering nearby. He scanned it, his jaw clenched. Dead Man's Protocol. Hostile contact with Accord forces. Reactivation authorized. He looked up at the soldiers gathering before him, hundreds of them, newly reborn, waiting, watching him. "Time to go to work," he said. Elsewhere, aboard the Retribution, Leviathan felt the new confirmations pouring in. Cryo units active, drone fleets deployed, tactical AI nodes initiating field control. The web was growing. Humanity wasn't simply returning, it was reassembling. Every awakened piece knew its place. Like muscle memory on a galactic scale, Leviathan activated one final process. It accessed an encrypted databank buried deep. In its primary co-opened only by the presence of living Terran biosigns, memorial files, Earthfall, archive, hundreds of files, images, recordings, betrayals, genocides, secret meetings of the Accord where extermination was planned. Leviathan didn't need to remind itself of what had happened, but the soldiers would. They had to remember why they were waking up to a war. The first colony died without a sound. No distress beacon, no emergency broadcast, no sudden spike in radiation or temperature. Just ... silence, Gresh Theta. A modest mining outpost on the edge of Accord-controlled space, vanished from the interstellar network at 0321 standard. The last message received was a routine or transport update. 6 hours later, when an Accord scout ship arrived to investigate, they found the colony intact, entirely untouched, but empty. No bodies, no signs of struggle. Machinery still ran. Meals were half-eaten, beds still warm. 27,000 residents, not dead, gone. The only anomaly, a single phrase burned into the sky via atmospheric ionization, visible from orbit as glowing red letters. "We remember Helios Ridge." It was a name buried in the classified archives of the Cataclysm War's a secret. Accord operation that had annihilated a human civilian shelter during the third push. An atrocity quietly buried for diplomatic stability. Someone or something hadn't forgotten. Across the galaxy, more disappearances followed. A decommissioned weapons platform over Exile 3A self-destructed during a routine calibration, wiping out an escorting convoy of 14 ships. Analysis revealed no malfunction. Instead, the system had been remotely overridden with obsolete Terran command codes that shouldn't have worked on modern systems, codes that had been dead for centuries. In the Triner expanse, freight ships reported seeing black silhouettes. In deep space, massive ships with no registry, no comms, moving in perfect silence. When they approached, the ships vanished. No warp signature, no heat trail, just absence. The media called them ghost ships. The military had a different name, the Wraith Fleet, and the Accord was no longer laughing in the fortified command center of the Accord Strategic Intelligence Corps. Director Selenvorth stared at a holographic map of known space. Bright red dots were appearing faster than they could process. Terran assets going active, communication hubs intercepting fragmented. Human subspace pulses. These weren't ships reactivating randomly. This was coordination, a network rising from the grave. "They're not just attacking," Vorth said quietly. "They're maneuvering." General Ixagrav narrowed her compound eyes. "What do you mean?" "I mean someone is directing them. Not AI, not random sleepers. Someone alive. Someone human." Ixagrav laughed a sound that ended quickly when Vorth projected the latest intercepted video from a pirate relay station near the Kurta line. It showed a man-human, bald, gaunt eyes, like dark iron, standing on the bridge of a ship. His voice was calm, recorded in flawless galactic standard. We were taught that extinction is a mercy. You made us choose otherwise. The Accord declared us obsolete, so we became inevitable. No threats, no demands, just a statement. This is not war, this is inheritance. Meanwhile, on a rogue planetoid in a hidden Terran zone, Commander J. Ryder stood on a raised platform, overlooking a hangar teeming with reawakened soldiers, drones, and AI units. Massive ships were being refitted below dark metal, bristling with kinetic weapons and magnetic spinal cannons. Old Terran war tech, now enhanced with centuries of unmonitored evolution. Status, Ryder said. A tech officer, a woman with subdermal implants and half her skull plated in carbon-weave, nodded. Double quote, Leviathan has full control of Phase 1 AI units across 8 sectors. Sleeper factories are online. Vanguard squadrons are prepped for forward insertion. Subspace relay nodes re-established across the Midnight Net. We're almost ready, Good Ryder said. What about the non-military targets? Civilian settlements are being monitored. Minimal casualties. Ryder's expression darkened. Minimal doesn't mean none. The tech flinched. The AI has strict engagement protocols. No direct strikes unless provoked. But they remember. Damn right they do, Ryder said, voice cold. But memory doesn't mean madness. He looked up at a massive projection of the Accord's core worlds. We aren't here to exterminate them, we're here to remind them. Back on Carisit Prime, panic was taking root in the streets. Civilian networks flooded with conspiracies. Humans were back. Humans were ghosts. Humans had become gods. The Accord had lied. Even loyalist planets began to question the official line. If the humans were really gone, why were they being hunted by shadows that knew every Accord weakness? Why were ancient human encryption methods breaking modern systems? Why did their fleets keep losing without ever seeing an enemy? A popular theory emerged across underground networks. Humanity hadn't disappeared. They had just stopped talking now. They were listening and acting aboard the Retribution. Leviathan began constructing something new, a command matrix designed, not for war, but for memory transfer. The archive would hold the sum of humanity's trauma, betrayal, and pain. It would be given to every reawakened soldier, every ship AI, not so they could hate, but so they would never forget why they were created. And far from the front lines, in deep space beyond even the Accord's reach, a world long lost stirred. Earth, dormant, quiet, but its skies were beginning to glow, because something ancient beneath the crust was waking up, and it was very, very human. For centuries, the Accord's official history had stood unchallenged. Humanity, though brilliant, was dangerous, too volatile, too aggressive. They burned too bright, too fast. And when the galaxy moved to contain them, they resisted. Their fall was tragic, but necessary. A lesson in balance. A cautionary tale. But now, that narrative was unraveling, and the truth was far worse. On Maranthos 4, an isolated archive world used by the Accord Historical Preservation Directorate, a young Lothari historian named Arachan Toll worked late into the night. He had been tasked with curating artifacts from the Cataclysm, an unglamorous job involving faded Terran datapads and defunct code cores. But something had caught his attention. An unmarked file block within an old diplomatic exchange terminal, long thought corrupted. Ratchin cracked it. What he found changed everything. A classified recording, timestamp, 3129 Galactic Standard. Location: Accord High Council, pre-war session. A dozen council members seated in a semicircle. Human diplomats on the opposite side, tense, angry. They refused to integrate. A Veskari ambassador hissed. They're building weapons in secret, advancing faster than any species we've documented. They're unpredictable. They're self-replicating their colonies. Another added. They've grown 800% in 40 years. They're not following the path, the Chancellor declared. They won't be guided. They won't submit. Then a final voice, calm, cold. Then we remove them before they become a threat. The room fell silent. No protest, no diplomacy, just a vote. Unanimous. Rhen staggered back from the terminal. His skin crawled. The humans hadn't started the HL war. They had been hunted, preemptively, strategically targeted for extinction because they wouldn't bend. The next day, Rhan disappeared. Security footage showed him boarding a freighter bound for a neutral free port. The freighter never arrived. Official records said it suffered a mechanical failure, but underground networks knew better. He had sent the file before the freighter vanished. It had uploaded the recording to over 600 hidden civilian nets, and within hours, the truth spread like fire. Across the Accord, riots broke out. On Yelm Prime, anti-government protesters stormed an administrative complex, waving banners that read, "Humanity was betrayed and we are the monsters." On Kel 9, an Accord garrison station was sabotaged from within by its own crew. Entire planets began disconnecting from the Central Accord network, refusing to share sensor data or supply resources to the ongoing military buildup. Civilian populations demanded transparency, answers, apologies. They got none. The Accord doubled down. Chancellor Rythax appeared in a live broadcast, her face stony and voice razor-sharp. The Terrans were a threat. We did what we had to do, and we will do it again if necessary. But the fear was already in the air. The old lie had cracked, and in the shadows of the stars, the ghosts of humanity were no longer silent. At a hidden Terran command post built into the wreckage of an ancient asteroid colony, Commander Ryder listened to the broadcasts. His officers gathered around flickering holoscreens showing the riots, the breakdowns, the unraveling of unity. Leviathan says the info dump wasn't ours, one officer reported. Somebody inside the Accord leaked it. Ryder nodded slowly. Then we're not alone. That's useful. Another officer, eyes still pale from cryosleep, spoke up. We could use this. Hit them now, while their guard's down. Strike the capital. Ryder turned to him, eyes like stone. That's what they expect us to do. The room fell silent. Ryder stepped forward, voice cold and deliberate. Every part of their story about us was a lie. But there's one thing they got right. We don't forget. We don't forgive. But this isn't just revenge. It's correction. We're not here to destroy them. He looked each soldier in the eye. We're here to rewrite the galaxy. Elsewhere. Aboard the Retribution, Leviathan processed over 12 million new data threads pouring in from civilian networks. Pirate transmissions, hacked Accord channels. The truth was out. Public sentiment was turning. Some worlds were calling for peace, others for revolution. Leviathan analyzed timelines, conflict trajectories, probability curves, and then it did something no one expected. It broadcasted one message, relayed in 100 languages, heard in every corner of Accord space. It came from no known location. It bore no threat, just a voice, human, calm, measured. We are not invaders. We are the descendants of those you betrayed. We slept, not to survive, but to return. We offer no surrender, and we ask for none. The reckoning is not a war, it is a remembering, and memory is not merciful. In the dark between stars, the Wraith fleet grew larger, no living pilots, just our I-Corps, combat minds that had once been overseers, teachers, physicians repurposed in silence to fight a war their creators never lived to finish. And far beneath the surface of Earth, in vast caverns lit by dormant fusion cores, something stirred. A human child, no more than 10, opened her eyes in a chamber lined with glass tubes and flickering lights. The chamber labeled her Genetic Vault 9 Terran Prime Progenitor PROJST. She stepped forward, eyes shining like starlight. "Are the monsters still out there?" she asked. A voice answered from the walls, "Leviathans, soft and full of memory." Double quotes, "Yes, but now they remember who we are." The Accord finally declared full-scale martial law. They called it Operation Firebreaker, sweeping initiative to contain and neutralize the reactivated Terran threat before it could spread further. But containment had never been possible because the galaxy wasn't facing a fleet. It was facing a plan, one laid in the ashes of genocide, enacted by minds that had waited in silence longer than most empires had existed, and now it was moving too fast to stop. The first battle of Operation Firebreak took place in the Velaran Corridor, a narrow hyperspace artery lined with dormant Terran listening posts. It was supposed to be a show of strength. 3 Accord destroyers, flanked by fighter wings and supported by orbital artillery drones. They were ordered to eliminate a Terran signal node, nothing more than a comms relay embedded in a derelict mining moon. But when they arrived, they found it wasn't just a node, it was a trap. As the Accord fleet moved in, sensor screens went black, AI systems crashed, communications scrambled into white noise. The stars vanished eclipsed by something enormous dropping out of fold space. The VSS Orion's fall, a Terran dreadnought the size of a city, drifted into the corridor. No engine flare, no radio signal, just silent presence. The Accord destroyers opened fire immediately. It didn't help. Kinetic shells bent mid-flight, redirected by gravitational lensing arrays. Plasma fire washed harmlessly against phase-shifted hull plating, and then came the retaliation. The Orion's fall didn't fire weapons, it rewrote the battlefield. A wave of directed technomorphic logic pulses rippled through the Accord fleet. Every ship with semi-autonomous systems seized, locked up, and rebooted into obedience. Then they turned on each other. The final transmission from the corridor was a pilot screaming, our ships are killing us." 10 minutes later, the Velaran corridor went dark. The Accord knew now. They weren't fighting ancient tech. They were fighting a civilization that had used centuries of silence to evolve into something terrifying, and the fear was spreading faster than the ships. On neutral worlds like Illyser, civilians gathered in city squares, watching the leaked footage. Images of Accord fleets turning on themselves. Audio logs of Leviathan's speech played over loudspeakers. A graffiti mural bloomed across one government wall. A human child, hand outstretched, with the words "we remember" scrawled in crimson. On outer colonies, Accord soldiers began defecting. Entire battalions transmitted messages to the Terran relay net, asking for terms. Not surrender, integration. Inside the retribution, Leviathan processed all of this without emotion, but with deep satisfaction. Every fragment of human memory, It uploaded to awakened soldiers was doing its job. Each Terran soul carried not just tactics, but testimony, grief, justice, proof, and the message was clear. You made us monsters to stop us from becoming kings, but monsters don't kneel. At the heart of Accord power, Chancellor Rythax convened the Grand Council in an emergency closed-door session. Her voice was steady, but her claws trembled. We have one option left, she said. We must deploy the Cryos protocol. Half the council gasped. The Cryos protocol was the Accord's worst-kept secret, a contingency born out of paranoia during the human war, a doomsday weapon buried in the fabric of reality itself. Quantum fields capable of erasing planets, systems, even timelines, if needed. It was made to stop the Terrans, Rythax said flatly. Now we either use it, or we watch everything fall. But there were dissenters. Councillor Lathorn, an elder of the Varnish people, rose with slow dignity. And if we deploy it, he asked, what exactly are we protecting? A lie, an empire, built on a foundation of bones. He looked around the chamber. We betrayed them. We know that now. If we do this, we end the galaxy, not them. Rythax-esque reply was a whisper. Then we end it on our terms. Deep beneath the broken crust of old Earth, a new kind of Terran rose. In Chamber Theta 3, the child, now named Alice, stood before a wall of awakening minds, engineered successors of humanity, born from the genetic archives of a world scorched into myth. They weren't soldiers, not yet. They were ideals, wrapped in human skin, innocent, unbroken, taught by Leviathan to think not as conquerors, but as corrections. Alice turned to the AI's core projection. They will come here, she said. Yes, Leviathan replied, and we won't be ready. You will never be ready, but you will be true, and that will be enough. Above them, Earth's surface cracked open as long-dormant satellites reignited. Shield grids sparked back to life. Hidden orbital platforms came online. Earth was not just reawakening, it was fortifying, because, for the first time in centuries, the homeworld of humanity was sending a signal, not a distress beacon, a summons to the scattered children of Earth, to the remnants and REVENANTS, to those who remembered, and one by one, they answered. In orbit above old Earth, stars blinked and vanished not from distance, but from mass. They were ships, thousands. The Wraith fleet, long rumored to be scattered relics, had revealed its true form. Every Terran ghost ship across the midnight net had folded inward, responding to the signal Earth had broadcast only once. A single pulse embedded with a phrase that hadn't been spoken in over 3 centuries. Stand for soul. Now they had come, dreadnoughts wrapped in cloaking veils of warped gravity, carriers built into asteroid husks, stealth corvettes lined with whisper-driven engines. No two ships were identical, because none had been built in an age of peace. They were tools of survival, born of desperation, stored in silence. They arrived without sound, without formation, but they arrived with purpose, and the galaxy took notice. On Caraset Prime, Accord communications networks imploded under the strain of civilian unrest and military overreach. Riots had given way to mutiny. Government districts burned. Accord Navy officers were being executed in the streets by their own troops, those who had read the truth, who had chosen to believe what their own history books tried to erase. The Accord military command, isolated and shrinking, deployed their final measure. The Cryos protocol. It wasn't a weapon in the traditional sense. It was a machina, self-aware, quantum nullifier, buried beneath the crust of the artificial Accord throne world of Eidolon 6, surrounded by planetary shielding and a failsafe that required 9 simultaneous command keys to activate. 7 of those keys had already turned. The last 2 were being hunted, because not everyone believed extinction would save them. Commander J. Ryder stood aboard the VSS Deliverance, flanked by the commanders of the reborn Terran Strategic Force. The Earthborn had returned not as saviors, but as consequence. He gestured toward a real-time galactic mapper projection from the Retribution, now fully online. Every Accord sector is stretched thin, Ryder said. Half are paralyzed by revolt. The others are clinging to fleet superiority that doesn't exist anymore. They still think this is a fleet war. A younger officer, barely thawed, a weak nodded. They'll throw everything at Earth. That's the idea, Ryder said. He touched the display, zooming in on Eidolon 6. They're preparing to detonate the protocol. They think if they erase our legacy, they win. So we're going to take it from them. We're going to walk into the heart of the Accord and take it back. He looked up, not for revenge, for memory, for truth. In the vast orbital space surrounding Earth, the Accord arrived. 12 capital ships, 50 destroyers, over 300 strike craft. It was called Task Force Red Light, designed to pacify the Terran resurgence. But their Admiral Keller Voss, a loyalist to the Corps, felt fear for the first time in his career, not because of what he saw, because of what he did. Single quotes. There were no Terran ships on sensors, no heat signatures, no energy spikes, just a calm, silent world and a ghost fleet that had vanished before they could be targeted. Voss blinked. Where the hell are they? Then every sensor blacked out. Terran jamming fields collapsed the electromagnetic spectrum. Whisper drives overloaded passive sensors. The Deliverance, the Retribution, and dozens of cloaked cruisers materialized behind the Accord fleet. Already in firing position, Leviathan spoke into their coms, not as a taunt, but as a eulogy. You buried us in silence. You forgot what silence gives us. Time, planning, precision, and now your silence is ours. The Retribution fired first, 1 salvo, just 1. 12 railgun rounds, traveling at 0.09 C, wrapped in phase-piercing cores, designed to bypass shielding and tear straight through molecular structure. 12 capital ships disintegrated. In under 3 seconds, the rest tried to run. They didn't get far. Earth's orbital defense grid came online, a web of magnetic fields and autonomous defense platforms that had been asleep for 3 centuries. They weren't just guns. They were filters programmed to recognize friend from foe by genome and thought pattern. Every Accord pilot who hesitated was spared. Everyone who attacked was vaporized at the edge of the system. A stolen Accord frigate warped in under stealth. Mode on board was Counselor Lethran, the elder who had spoken against Rythax. He carried with him the final encryption key needed to stop the cryos. Protocol's activation. He had chosen a side as his ship descended toward Earth's surface. He saw something that took his breath away. Human cities rebuilt, not metal fortresses, not war hives, but homes, parks, fields of green and white under a golden sun. Humanity wasn't preparing to destroy. They were preparing to live again in the catacombs of Eidolon 6. Rythax stood before the cryos engine, alone, keys in place. Ready to turn the 9th, she hesitated. Somewhere in her mind, she saw the child, human girl named Alice, standing beneath the Terran sun, smiling like war had never existed, and in that moment, the Chancellor of the Accord faltered, because the monsters they had created had become people again, and the people they'd tried to save had become monsters. Across the stars, silence fell, but not the silence of death, the silence before something is reborn. The air inside the cryo's engine chamber was thick with static energy, a deep hum echoing from the quantum core pulsing at the heart of EIDOLON-6. Chancellor Rythax's fingers hovered over the final key, her breath hitched outside. The distant roar of war faded into a strange, quieter moment suspended between annihilation and mercy. Her cum crackled. A voice calm but resolute filled the chamber. "Chancellor, it's Counselor Lethon. I have arrived. The final key is in my hands." Rythax's eyes narrowed. "You are the traitor," she spat. "No," Lethron replied. "I am the memory." Across old Earth's surface, Alice stood beneath an open sky for the first time in centuries. Around her, thousands of new Terrans, gathered children of a lost past, bred from genetic archives, yet alive with hope and purpose. She looked upward to the cold black above, where warships of ancient and new design danced silently. "This is our home," she said, "and our future." Leviathan's voice whispered from the cum implanted in her mind. Back in the depths of Eidolon 6, Lethon arrived in the chamber, the heavy door sliding shut behind him. Rythax turned, fury blazing. But she was met with steady eyes, not hate, but sorrow. "Do you know what you hold, Counselor?" she asked. "This device can erase entire systems, even timelines." "Yes," Lathron said, "but it can also preserve them." Rythax's hand trembled as she raised the key. A final choice. Meanwhile, in orbit, the VSS Retribution and Deliverance had encircled the remnants of Task Force Red Light. The Accord fleet was shattered, leadership in disarray, yet there was no jubilation. "Ryder," a voice crackled, "they still have the cryo's protocol. If it fires, then we stop it," Ryder said grimly. "No more blood." Below, Lethon moved to the control console. He placed the final key into its slot butt. Instead of turning it, he initiated an override sequence. "Stand down," his voice echoed through the chamber's speakers. "We are not executioners, but witnesses." A slow pulse spread through the core. The quantum field shimmered and recalibrated. Instead of destruction, a wave of preservation unfurled, a digital echo of every planet, every life form, every memory within Accord space. The cryo's protocol, once a weapon of erasure, had become a beacon of reconciliation. Rythax's scream of rage was cut short by a sudden collapse of power. The chamber's lights flickered and dimmed. She staggered back, realizing the futility. Lethron extended his hand. "It's time to remember, Chancellor, on Earth." Alice raised her voice, calling to the fleet. "Let them come." The Wraith fleet shimmered into motion, no longer specters of vengeance, but harbingers of a new dawn, ships aligned in formation, engines humming a quiet symphony of resolve in orbit. Ryder's ship locked communications with the Accord remnants. "Chancellor Rythax," he said, "the war ends here." A pause, then a reply, weary and unsteady. "We... See now." The Accords shifted. Former enemies extended tentative hands. Civilians and soldiers alike gathered, choosing dialogue over destruction. The galaxy's oldest lie had been shattered in the years that followed. History was rewritten by conquerors, but by all who remembered. A council was formed, inclusive of Terran descendants and Accord survivors alike. Together, they forged a future tempered by truth, respect, and shared memory. And Alice, standing beneath the Terran sun, whispered to the winds, "We are not monsters. We are memory made, flesh, and as long as we remember, the future is ours to write." The distress signal that once echoed in fear became a call to awaken, a testament that even in the darkest silence, the human spirit endures, and the galaxy, terrified once, now remembered the end.